Greetings from the Iowa Beef Center, and welcome to this episode of the Iowa Beef Collective. I am your host, Patrick Wall. We are here again at the Genetics Symposium, taping this episode live from the Hansen Center here on campus at Iowa State. And with me in this episode is Brian McCulloh. I developed a long list. I think there's over 100 guests on it when I decided that we were going to do this, and you were one of the first ones that I wrote down, just because we've kind of done this format before at a conference a handful of years ago. But your career is something that I think younger producers and middle-aged producers can really grab something from. So I guess talk about your career. And for those of you that maybe are unfamiliar with Brian, he ran Woodhill Angus for how many years? 40 years, and recently retired. So we got a number of topics we could talk about: genetic selection, transfer of the operation towards the end of your career, retirement, things of that nature. So let's dig right in. Start at the beginning. How did Brian McCulloh land at Woodhill? What'd you do prior to that? And then kind of snapshot your career for us.
Well, thanks, Patrick. I would just, I'll try to be somewhat brief. Grew up an Iowa farm kid, grew up in Clinton County over between DeWitt and Clinton, little town called Lowmore. And I was fortunate because would have graduated from high school in 1977. And, it was a pivotal time in animal agriculture and farming, and had a great mentor in my dad. I didn't grow up with registered Angus cattle. We had a commercial cow herd. We actually raised hogs farrow to finish, and Dad fed cattle, but had an interest in animal agriculture. Actually had, like many young people in Iowa, we showed steers at the county fair. We showed hogs at the county fair. I thought the guy judging the hogs and the cattle was something to aspire to. And I remember Dr. Gary Minish and Dr. Roger Hunsley were two names who judged our county fair in my high school years. Found out they majored in animal science, so I decided I'm going to go to Iowa State. My mom, incidentally, graduated from Iowa State back in the 40s. So went to Iowa State, got a degree. My senior year, between my junior and senior year at Iowa State, I took a job as a summer apprentice with the American Angus Association, was able to travel throughout the United States with each regional manager, and that was also a pivotal learning experience. Graduated from Iowa State. I was on the judging team. Gary Minish, ironically, called me right after I got back from Thanksgiving break my senior year and said, I'd be interested in having you come help me coach our judging team at Virginia Tech. I took him up on that, and after a year and a half, Dr. Jerry Lipsey left the American Angus Association as director of junior activities. I interviewed. Rather than finishing my master's, thought I needed to get a job, earn some money. Went to work for the American Angus Association as director of junior activities. This would have been from 1982 through 83. And if you think back to where breed registrations were for the Angus breed at that time, it was at a low. And I just felt like if I could run around the country smiling and shaking hands and telling everybody how great the Angus business was, I was going to give it a try. I met a man at a cattle sale in Michigan, actually when we were traveling with the Virginia Tech judging team, and his name was Dr. Dan Borgen. Okay, I wrote him down. At that time, we didn't have cell phones. I just had a little date book in my front pocket. I said, if I ever meet this guy, I want to remember his name. Turns out Dr. Minish was consulting with Dan. Dr. Minish called me, said, do you know of anybody interested in managing an Angus herd in Wisconsin? I called him up after the end of the day and moved to Viroqua in 1984. So That's how it all happened, and it worked. Came into the Angus breed when EPDs were just introduced.
Yep.
And that was an advantage. I understood the fundamental concept from my Iowa State
Your judging days,
and my judging days. And there was a type change going on in the Angus breed at the time. Decided we were going to focus on calving ease, maternal traits, and then end product merit and performance. And so those were the breeding objectives we started with in '84. And we stayed focused on them. We used the tools, and it worked.
Talk about the Woodhill herd from kind of where it started. You know, what was the scope? Did you change the scope? Because I know you didn't start with, you know, the 100-head bull sale. It took a while to get there. So walk us through the progression. You know, how long for a listener that thinks they wanted to kind of harness the performance testing and genomics and all the things that we're here for at the symposium, how long do the expectations need to be to get a herd from maybe where you start to where you got it, where, you know what, I think I'm kind of there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is absolutely spot on, Patrick, in terms of a great question, because just looking at something we call generation interval, okay? So we started with 35 cows, and we used the foundation cows were from performance herds. That was a common denominator. There was a professor at Virginia Tech in animal breeding. His name was Dr. Andy Swiger, and his statement that I remember was herd first, individual second, okay? So we started with performance cattle, but I think for those starting out, just remember that from the time you breed a cow or heifer to a bull, it's essentially 5 years before you can step away and say, that was a good decision.
Right.
And so realistically, overnight success in the purebred business takes 15 years. And that's 3 generations where you could say to yourself, you know, I've got a pretty good handle on what I'm promoting, what I'm selling. Always be ready to answer the question, why am I doing this? What are those breeding objectives? The tools are better now than they've ever been, that being the genomic enhanced EPDs. And I think you will see incremental improvement on these traits that you decide to focus on if you stay focused. And I think actually, Patrick, that's the big challenge today. We didn't have social media when I started out in '84. Instant communication wasn't happening. And so there wasn't this pressure to go to a sale report and say, oh my goodness, I need to be using this bull because I saw that he just sold a $100,000 bull.
Right.
So I think the advice I would offer up is for young producers starting out is establishing your objectives, staying focused on them, and chip away at it incrementally. And you know, in terms of marketing, everybody talks about marketing. It's communicating within reason, return phone calls, how I talk to producers. I mean, most commercial cow-calf producers, because incidentally, our focus was selling bulls.
Right.
We focused on selling commercial bulls because it was our opinion that if we had a market and could sell those commercial bulls at a level of profit, the females would take care of themselves, okay?
I'm going to ask you a loaded question that I think I know the answer to. You know, we're here talking about all the genetic technologies that are available to you. You said 15 years to take a herd from where you start to where you think it needs to go. With all the tools we have now that you didn't have in 1984, it's still 15 years. Or is it shorter than that?
Well, that's great point, because with regard to the genomic enhanced EPDs, okay, I would say this. Here's how I'll answer it. When you start out with your foundation cows, depending on, you kind of still need their operator's manual.
Yeah.
Because if you assemble a group of females and you create your first calf crop, you're going to find out that, man, I thought this cow could do this for me, but she didn't quite hit the mark.
Right.
So there is this orientation. I think it's an orientation of identifying the strengths and weaknesses of your cattle, also refining your management and how that works into the profit picture. So I suspect we could knock a few years off of it, but I'm going to still suggest 10 years. Now, you might hit a home run. You might have found a cow in your initial search or with your initial herd acquisition or your startup. Maybe it was a female you had and you bred on for a number of years, and you can take her and improve on her. I think it all depends on the familiarity with your foundation females.
Yep. The direction I was taken from that question is, it still takes 284 days to get a calf out of her. It still takes another year to get calves out of her daughters. So the generation turnover is the same. Which cows do it, you might find them a little quicker with all the tools that are available. But I asked that question because I think maybe you could shave a little, but you're still limited to science. I mean, they have to gestate and have the calf. And some of the stuff, I think, whether you could say it's oversold or maybe even overused, we know a lot about a cow on paper, what her numbers say, what she should do. Does she actually work in our environment? And we still don't know that until she does it.
An absolutely fact, okay? Yep. And this is in a fast-paced, I want it now world. If we see a female, for instance, in the Angus breed, because that's what I'm most familiar with, who's in the top 1% to 5% on a index, okay? Mm-hmm. Let's just use an index. There's many different, the composition of a female in the top 1% to 5% is going to be a pretty wide range.
Yeah.
Okay? There are bigger frame cattle that touch the bases. And so this comes back to just exactly what you said. You have to, I think the right word is how they tolerate adversity. And maybe the word is robust.
And environmental challenges.
Yeah, environmental challenges. Because almost no one today in animal agriculture has enough help.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
We've done about 6 episodes on labor.
Labor. It's difficult. So if the cattle present me with a problem, it's a deal breaker. Okay? So you can look at those objective metrics, her EPD profile or his EPD profile. But if he falls out of the window of acceptability for some what I call deal breaker traits, attitude, foot quality, udder quality, rebreed, or just maintaining body condition.
Right.
Unfortunately, a lot of commercial cow-calf operations haven't changed their management that much.
No.
Okay? And I'm not being critical, it's just a fact. So they turn them out on grass when it gets green in the spring, and they bring them back in the fall. And so if cattle need a lot of extra coddling and attention, you're not going to have a happy customer.
Yeah. And I ask this question at a lot of extension events, and I don't get a lot of admission from the audience, but I can tell from their reaction, oh yeah. I ask them, how many people are running cows on the same grass that their dad or their granddad did? And how many cows did granddad have? And is that number that you're running the same as Grandpa's, or is it different? Most of them, it's 120 cows on that piece of ground, and their cows are 400, 500, 600 pounds heavier than Grandpa's were. And I think that's where a lot of, we can talk about genetics all we want. They got to work on the ground we put them on, and they're a heck of a lot different beast than they were 40 years ago.
They are light years different, okay? And again, people like to say, what's the best one?
Yeah.
What's the best bull? And it isn't a cop-out to say it depends.
Right.
What do you want them to do? And I think that's the continued place to be is why and what. Whether it's you as a seed stock producer or as a commercial producer, what am I doing and why? And try to come up with some sort of economic metric. And something as simple as profitability.
Right.
And it's going to vary depending on each farm's advantages. I mean, there are resources that this guy's got that this person doesn't have. And it's not right or wrong, but I think it's important to step away and say, okay, I can capitalize on these resources with my operation, and it's going to need these features for the cattle that I choose to breed.
And without fail, those two producers will like the same bull, and he'll work for one, but he sure as heck won't work for the other.
Right.
And I guess, is your role as a seed stock producer to try to tell your customer, no, not this one. I think this one. Or do you not enter into the decision making and try to, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, talk a customer out of a particular line or a bull or a cow? Or
yeah, I mean, over the years, I would have talked a number of people, especially on a sight unseen phone call.
Yeah.
And these have been seed stock producers. And I will tell you, to tell somebody that, no, you're not sure this is the right one, guess what? I've found I have a customer down the road. That customer comes back. But to your point, I try not to get too bossy with the customer, and it's out of respect. I think my role is to ask questions without pressure and see if we can't collectively move in a direction of focus for what they want the bull to do. Quite honestly, in the last 10 years, I would have a little meeting. This is for seed stock producers. You know how it is at that time frame, about 45 minutes to an hour before the sale?
The meeting.
Guess what I did? I said I would see bull customers sitting down staring at their catalogs. They'd been out and looked at the bulls. I said, hey, come on up here. We'd just sit down on the bleachers, and we would ask. I said, do you have any questions? And invariably they did. And that was a captive audience because this is a time, rather than me running around and glad handing with this guy or this guy, this is an opportunity. And there were producers there who didn't want to ask a question, but they were listening.
Yeah.
And it is a teachable moment. So I think again, it's interesting. You've been involved in extension your whole life, and what a great concept. It's taking information to the people that can put it in action.
Yep. In a previous role, I did some sale consulting. I found it I wouldn't say more fun, but certainly more satisfying to talk a producer out of a purchase that I swore that from the information they told me, that wasn't what they needed. So I was just curious from the breeder perspective, like, gosh, that's a fine line. And I gained respect by talking them into something else that I thought would fit more what they wanted. It's a tightrope.
Yeah, it is.
Trying to tell somebody what they should want.
it is a tightrope, and you have to be comfortable with who you are. But the golden rule applied most often, which is, hey, how do I want to be treated? And there are so many variables that go into the profitability component to this business. It's a great time to be in the cattle business right now. But it is also a nice opportunity, since you're feeling good, to maybe step back and maybe look at the cost side of your business. You know the gross dollars are there, but what might I try? Just try. I'm not saying you have to change radical direction, but there might be opportunities to fine-tune what I'm doing that will result in a little more profit.
So you mentioned, we've talked about the speed of kind of morphing an operation. There's two technologies that are fairly widely used now that I would say wouldn't be available in 1984, and that's embryo transfer and sex semen. Did you utilize those tools, and do you think that, because I might be on an island because I have an opinion about sex semen that's pretty negative, because I still think that we still have to work with nature and both sexes are important. Did you utilize both those tools, and how'd they work, or how'd you utilize those two?
We did utilize embryo transfer, okay? And I'm going to say it. We were lucky. We identified a female that was prepotent, and we flushed her, and she responded favorably. Having said that, I have been to a number of herds where people engage in identifying what they think is the best cow. They flush her heavily, and they find out, back to the 5-year plan, 5 years down the road, that her daughters weren't quite what I thought they would be. So I think the key there is defining the reason you flush a cow or a heifer. On the topic of sorted semen, my attitude is I know that the technology is getting better for conception, but if I'm going to go to the work of synchronizing and breeding, I select the bulls to do both. And I think that might be a subtle change as we go forward in the seedstock world. We could see some matings designed in a terminal role in the Angus breed. I could envision 10 years from now, there could be two different types of Angus, okay?
Yeah, I would say there largely is now already.
Yeah, there will be Angus, what I call terminal sires, that can blow and go from a standpoint of conversion and gain and end product merit and marbling with any breed of any color. They're doing it. But probably not quite as easy to accomplish today is to surround yourself with cattle that can predictably sire those profitable, long-lasting cows. And we're still gathering the data. It's nobody's fault. It's just been hard data to capture and then train the genomic markers to identify them. We're just tipping that iceberg right now. So I didn't use sorted semen.
Excellent answer. I'm not a huge proponent of the sex semen craze. To me, it seems like producers are saying, she's a great cow, let's make 100 of her. Kind of ignoring the fact that her probably major value would be a son to make a whole bunch of half-blood daughters, and we're ignoring that segment. I also, my genetic mind, you're ignoring the sex-linked traits, which I think are really important. We could go on for another half an hour. Best sex-linked genetic story in the world is Secretariat. He was a great racehorse. His sons were awful.
Good point.
His daughters were awesome because his enlarged heart was on the female chromosome.
Interesting.
And that in and of itself is probably the story that I'm like, man, this sex link thing, you can go a heck of a long ways really quickly and find out we got there and it didn't really do what we wanted.
You know, on that topic, we always keep referencing other species, chickens, pigs, and their shorter generation interval, and even dairy to an extent, because environment is less of an issue in the dairy world. The thing we have to keep reminding ourselves in the beef cattle industry is the diverse environments that these cattle have to work.
Cows eat grass.
Yeah.
It's about as simple as it gets.
It really is. And I never dreamed, even 25 years ago, let alone 40 years ago, we could make Angus cattle as good as we've made them. And so we're going to ramp up this progress. But, you know, I think just keeping our eye, you know, not becoming too tunnel vision in pursuing growth and end product merit, and then sacrificing the profitable cow pieces.
Last question, and this is one I've wanted to ask you forever. 1984, looking back on your career in the seedstock business, what do you wish you knew in 1984 that would have made you better or faster at what you did with Woodhill?
I was too, I've thought about this. I was too conservative, okay? And I actually made this comment in another podcast. This is where, and this take this with a grain of salt, but youthful exuberance is an okay feature.
Yeah.
Okay? Bridle it a little bit, okay? Use some good judgment. But if I had it to do over again, I would have gone to about 3 or 4 herds, where in the name of herd first, individual second, and I would have said, what would it cost me to get into your bred heifers?
Mm-hmm.
And captured, you know, and this is no different, Patrick, than the comments that many farmers have made when they could have bought land in eastern Iowa for $600 an acre. But I could have bought bred heifers in the early 80s.
Yeah.
Pretty reasonable. And I probably should have dove at those and then assembled that herd a little quicker. But I was cautious. And I would also say I was a victim of the environment at the time. It was a terrible time in production ag from 1980 to 1996. So
interest rates, risk, you know, going to the bank wasn't the same decision that it would have been other times.
Your capital base eroded in value. And boy, in the name of humility, which a little bit of humility goes a long way. And it's okay. It's okay to be confident. It's okay to have vision. Pump the brakes every now and then and recognize that maybe I'm not as good as I think I am.
And I think, you know, for the young producers, there's a nugget in what you're saying. At least that's what I'm drawing from it. If you're going to start, you can't start with junk and breed up.
Correct.
You better start with the cow that you think you want and need and get her. And what you're saying in retrospect to your career is get her in volume.
Yeah.
Get more than one. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of young producers that I'm going to start with what I can afford and just breed up from there. I don't think you can do that in 15 years.
Yeah, I don't either, but I would suggest this, you know, and here's an opportunity. There's a number of people out there that are in their 70s that are looking to retire.
Yeah.
And they've been working on a smaller herd of cows over a 30, 40-year period, quietly going about their business. There are some opportunities to go seek out some of those herds, a herd that you admire. The guy's kind of quiet about it, or gal, and just say, hey, if you ever decide to sell your cows, give me a call. And maybe this isn't a highly promoted herd, but with the tools today, people say it's a big person's game. Not necessarily. The tools are out there for everybody, and once you quantify them, and once you focus and identify what you're trying to do, I would look to some of those places.
And I think emotionally, the 70-year-olds that I have talked to in the position you're describing, they would much rather sell them to a young person and continue to watch that herd from maybe another highway, but the herd is still there. Taking them to the sale barn in a dispersal or even a seed stock dispersal
Amen.
is not as enticing. And I think young producers maybe don't know that.
So for the younger group, look around you. You probably know of some herds that you never know until you ask.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to cap it off. We could go on for hours, you and I know, but I appreciate you coming on, and we'll get you back to the symposium and I think it's important for the audience to understand you have retired, yet you're still at an educational forum learning about the industry that you dedicated most of your career to. So thank you for being here, and thank you folks for joining us. As always, like and subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts. We're on all the socials. Like us on Facebook. Follow the Iowa Beef Center. Appreciate you joining in.
This institution is an equal opportunity provider. For the full non-discrimination statement or accommodation inquiries, go to www.extension.iastate.edu/legal.